Bring the heart.
It's time to get loud.
Let's go! Because this is Betfred Super League.
Bring it on.
Got me here. It took a big chunk out of me. Bleeding. It's bleeding. Oh no, it's bleeding. The thing just ripped me ear off. What do you think?
Hello again, everyone. It's that time of the week once again. Here comes the latest edition of Eddie and Stevo, the podcast, sponsored and supported by the title sponsors of the Super League. And come to think about it, just about everything else that's good about the game. It's Betfred, of course. So we are underway, and what an opening weekend that was. Some great games to enjoy, 4 of them live on telly. Red cards, yellow cards, great drama. It really was a fantastic start to the 2022 season. And as ever, with me to review it all is the man himself, Stevo. But before we go about and talk about rugby league, Stevo, this is Valentine's week. Happy St. Valentine's Day to you.
I got up this morning. I could not open the door. There was that many cards through the letterbox. Why these people send me these Valentine cards? So
and they're certainly not going to get one back, are they? There's certainly no cards going the other way.
So I'm not going to say to you, Happy Valentine's Day.
Fair enough. Okay. All right. Right. Let's talk about the rugby league action we've enjoyed. Did you enjoy all of that? I thought it was a tremendous start, didn't you?
Tremendous, as you say. Outstanding rugby league. And what about the crowds? They turned up in their thousands. It really is probably the best start to Super League since it was formed.
Very much so. And Channel 4, of course, terrestrial television, on board with, bells and whistles. To be fair, they were pretty good. But, hey, they got a fantastic match, didn't they?
Did they ever? I honestly thought that Leeds would just hang on. But you've got to look at the way that Warrington just fought against it. And Leeds down to 12 men. It looked as though they were going to snatch it. I was on the edge of my seat all throughout that game. I thought the commentary was good. I thought the build-up was good and thoroughly enjoyable. And that's what we want, isn't it?
Very much so, yeah. I mean, Adam Hills, the new frontman, in great form. No stranger, of course, to Channel 4 viewers. Kyle Amor, a talented co-commentator alongside Mark Wilson. And their audience, it peaked at almost 750,000, 7% of the total audience share that was available. So a great start for Channel 4 as well.
It certainly was. And I must say, congratulations to everybody concerned in that particular position. I think that we need as much publicity. The rugby league needs it. We've known that. We've talked about it for years and years and years. And let's hope that it continues. But as you say, great game. I loved every single minute.
Talking of minutes, did you notice the match clock at the top of your screen? It was counting down. Now, Neville Smith, who is the match director for Channel 4, our old pal, of course, our old executive producer, he wanted to do that way back in 1996. But he was told that British viewers like to see the clock counting up to half-time. 26 years later, he's snuck in and he's got it at last. But how long will it last this time, I wonder?
Well, it only lasted one game when he was at Sky, but I can assure you of one thing. I like that idea. He's snuck it in, hasn't he? Maybe not many people would notice this, but we certainly did.
Definitely. I mean, do you like it counting down rather than, as you know, in football and everything else, it counts up, the time counts up? You prefer it counting down?
I've always thought that way. The Aussies do it, the NFL do it.
It must be right then. It must be right then. The Aussies do it.
Well, not only that, the Americans do it, etc. I think it adds to the emotion, doesn't it? Oh, there's only 5 seconds to go, etc. and so forth. That's how it should be. But anyway, well done, Nev.
Yeah, it was a great start. It really was a great start for Channel 4, and we welcome them on board. They came in, as I say, with bells, whistles and fanfares, but there they are, and they've got another game this weekend. Now then, James Bentley sent off on his debut. Brad Dwyer yellow-carded. As you say, though, Warrington held on. Leeds almost won it, though. Warrington did show some resilience.
Yeah, they certainly did. And I thought Rashford was outstanding. They never gave in the situation. I thought that the Leeds coach was very, very good in regards to saying that he thought that they played exceptionally well, down to having a man sent off, etc. and so forth. And they played outstanding rugby league, but it was excitement all the way through. I have to congratulate that you know everybody involved in it. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yes, and we got that sent off, as you say, one of a few this weekend. The first one coming in the very first match. Saints, they looked brilliant against the Catalans, who started really strongly, didn't they, the Catalan Dragons? But their indiscipline cost them. And Dylan Napper, what on earth was he thinking about, Dylan Napper?
Well, I just can't sort of see why so early in the game. I mean, what was it, 15, 16 seconds before they had a bit of a punch-up? Now, it was obvious that they'd come to just spoil the party, to get into their faces. And they did. Look, both sides, the defence was, well, it was cruel at some point. They were really getting into each other. And that's why it turned out to be a really hard, solid game. But there was no doubt in my mind that Catalan came with the intention to just put them up, to get right into their faces, which they did. But as you say, it's not going to help when you get a man sent off. There was no doubt about the red card straight away, the tackle on Percival, and you just say to yourself, what would the coach be saying to him now? You're not come over here to prove that you're a tough man. You come over here to win rugby league games. And it's happened so many times in the past. I'm going to show that I'm the strong man, etc. and so forth. Listen, in those golden olden days when everybody used to belt each other, he probably would have been a star attraction. But we don't need that anymore.
The new head injury protocol states that a player who fails his head test this year will be out for 11 days now, not 7 as previously. Mark Percival, who was flattened by Napper, he seemed to be insisting he was okay, but he left the field. It was so late in the game, he didn't need to return. I wonder if he will be in the side for Saints this week. It'll be interesting, won't it?
Well, who comes up with that decision? I'm not right sure, but
it's got to be the medical people, hasn't it? It's got to be.
Yeah, and they've extended it to 11 days, and I think that's fine. But whoever has created that with a high tackle, surely the disciplinary committee now has to prove, and they say, we are going to clamp down. Now, 1 game here, 2 games here. I can remember it happened in the early 80s in Australia when it was like Thugby League, not Rugby League. And what did they do? They banned a player for the entire season. And boy, didn't the coaches take it on board, and didn't the players take it on board. And now is the opportunity, after the first round in Super League, to make sure that every single player, every single coach realizes that you're not just going to have a player out for maybe 1 or 2 games, but 10 games, nearly half the season. And that's the only way we can get away with it. It's the only way to make these thugs that are still playing our game to stop.
Well, we've had purges in the past when we were working. We were always a little bit confused, particularly at the start of the season, and then things tended to drop off. Interesting comment from the whole coach, Brett Hodgson. He says, I think wherever there is a change in this, and we've gone from 0 to 100, it's going to take a couple of weeks to understand what a red card is now. So long as the referees are consistent, so long as the disciplinary panel is consistent, we'll all know what a red card is from here on in, hopefully.
Well, like I've said, not just 1 or 2 games. Let's try 10. That'll stop it. That'll stop these people who think that they're rough and they're tough, ruining their opportunity. And if I was in charge of a club, I would say that if you get sent off, there's a certain percentage of your fee is removed and put into a charity or something of that nature. That's what we've got to do. We cannot just say, okay, we start 100%. After 3 weeks, we go to 70% and so on and so forth. No, we stick to 100%. We've got to get this message across.
Well, you talk about the way that the games are going, and I mean, we've touched briefly about St. Helens. They were outstanding. Do you think? I know you tipped them last week. I know you tipped them last year. I know you tipped them the year before, probably. Do you really think that St. Helens are champions 2022 in waiting already with 26 rounds to go?
Yes, I watched every single game, and you just took the tempo of all the games, and then you looked through them again and again. The tempo of that game was outstanding. And so, as we said, the Leeds Warrington, but the impact in defence from both sides, it was quite clear to me that Catalans, as I said earlier, they came to rough it up. St. Helens took it all in their stride, and that is why they are going to be hard to beat throughout this year.
Another interesting little quirky fact from the weekend, only one team, the Saints, made home ground advantage pay. 5 wins by teams who had to travel away from home.
Well, it shows you the professionalism that at one point, it's going to be tough. We've got to go to so-and-so, and we're not as confident. We're always confident at home. I think if you looked at last season, what about Catalans? They proved that it wasn't a case of we win at home and lose away. Far from it. So it didn't surprise me, Eddie.
Catalan might have a problem in the front row, mightn't they? I mean, Dylan Napper obviously will be up before the beak before too long. Julian Busquet broke his arm, so they've got a major problem hardly before the season's got going.
Yeah, and two big forwards, having said that.
Now, Toulouse would have been desperately wanting to get off to a winning start at home. And to be fair, they did compete for half an hour, but then Huddersfield saw them off. I still fear for Toulouse. They need to make that home ground of theirs a fortress, and they came unstuck. It was a big win for Huddersfield, wasn't it?
Certainly was. Look, you lay down what you can. You can put out on the paddock what you can. And it's quite obvious that Toulouse needs a lot more players. They need quality products. There's one thing working well for 15 minutes at the start of the game. I mean, I think they raced away to a 10-0 lead. But it was quite obvious that once the steam had run down, that was it. Huddersfield, the Giants, just took control. I was impressed by Levi. I thought he played exceptionally well. Huddersfield, if they keep sort of improving, it's difficult to say how good are they or how will they go in the future when they're playing against Toulouse. It's going to be really, really difficult for Toulouse to get a win this season. Never mind competing in the competition.
It is. It is going to be really tough for them. And I mean, we can't really, St. Helens apart, and I think universally people say that they are the team to beat this year again. We can't really say what's going to happen over the course of a season for all of these teams, really. But you're right. I mean, it's going to be tough for Toulouse, as it was tough for Lee, as it was tough for London to survive. No, it doesn't happen overnight. Do you think? Here's one for you now. Then, remember Catalan Dragons? Didn't they finish bottom of the pile 2 or 3 times? And they had an exemption from relegation. The team finishing 11th went down. Do you think the game should be bold and strong enough to say, we're too late now because we've already started, but to say, should they have said, Toulouse, you're with us for 2-3 years, let's just wait and see what happens?
Well, I'll agree with you on that point, because when you look down in Australia, there is no such thing as relegation. You can get the wooden spoon, but it's not an embarrassment as such as, well, that's it. We're out of the big league. You still have the opportunity And you still have the opportunity, of course, with restrictions on how many players you can buy. When you look over the years at the NRL, that the teams that have finished bottom, the following season or 2 seasons later, they're up there with a chance to get into the playoffs. So it does work in Australia. It has been proved. And I think it would be a good idea to at least give a team 2 or 3 years to settle into the right mood, get the right players. But will Super League say that? Will they do that?
To be fair, it has worked with the Catalan Dragons. I mean, it didn't work early on with, I remember we went up to Workington and places like that, and Oldham, clubs that were in Super League in the beginning, finished bottom of the pile, bang, they're gone, and they really literally are gone. They very rarely come back. Lee have done it, but very rarely do they come back. It's a difficult one. It's a difficult one because promotion and relegation, like the clock counting up to half-time, promotion and relegation is in the British psyche, isn't it?
I understand that. I can remember a game at Wakefield where they had their largest crowd because I think it was Wakefield Castleford, remember? And they had a huge crowd came to see who was going to be relegated and who was going to survive. Now, I don't think that that's looking towards the future, is it? For them to say, well, our biggest crowd was when we had a battle to see whether we're going to be relegated. That, to me, is not forward thinking. And I'm with you, Eddie. Give a team at least 2 years, even 3 years, to settle into the competition. But if you do that, all of a sudden, you'll get all the Premiership clubs saying, you're taking away the opportunity for us to get back into the big league. I understand that. But don't you think it's embarrassing that everyone that gets promoted the following season gets relegated? That's not forward thinking either.
No, it isn't. That is true. You mentioned that Wakefield Castleford game. Castleford, of course, went down that year. Castleford now very much one of the leading lights. But what a disappointing day for them in the first round. But what a first win for Paul Rowley, the new Salford coach, though. I mean, I don't know where this one's come from. This has come out of left field for me.
Well, obviously, the signing of Sneyd, his kicking game was outstanding. His kicking game was the reason why they won. So it's a matter of getting the right people at the right time. And it must be very disappointing because, to my knowledge, Sneyd played with Castleford for a couple of seasons.
Yeah. Yes, he did. He was. He was there before he went to Hull. Yeah.
And he 6 goals. That's the 12 points. That is so important. And that's how it's going to be in regards to you need a good goal kicker. There'll be times when you could have to scrape a win, either a drop goal or a penalty. And he's the man. How many times do you say, Sneyd, it's Sneyd?
Oh, yes, I know. Sneyd, yeah.
He's the man to do it. But it would have been very disappointing for Castleford at home, a bumper crowd as well. I watched the game, and I must say that both sides have a little bit of a problem in defence, but Castleford's, shall we say, defence positioning, they were caught out several times.
Indeedy. Now then, the Championship, we've mentioned the fact that all the Championship clubs have got this high ambition of getting into Super League. That competition now, the Championship, has been underway for 3 weeks now, and the table's starting to take shape. Low scoring round this weekend, only 22 points or less scored in 5 of the 6 matches. It's going to be a competitive championship again. Widnes top the table, Featherstone still unbeaten too, and Barrow, they're right up there as well. So who's going to come up this year and then face a struggle to stay up and probably go down in 2023?
Well, I think any rugby league supporter at this point in time will say, well, it has to be Featherstone, it has to be the favourites to get through. They've brought in a coach that has been so successful in Super League, and he will relish the fact to get into there. And they have to be favourites. I've tipped them to be promoted, as I've tipped Toulouse to be demoted. But it's good to say that there are not many runaway wins. You'll always get 1 or 2 or 3, but sometimes you get nearly all the games are won by very, very heavy scores. And the mere fact that we're not getting heavy scores against each individual team, it just says that that position, the Premiership, is a Championship, should I say, is going to be very, very strong. And as you say, the top three, Barrow, where have they come from?
I must say, witness 9-8 winners at Halifax. That's tremendous for them. Tremendous.
Yeah, it is. And Halifax will have a real good show on this as well, because I was there when they played the London Broncos, and Halifax played some really, really good open rugby league. Good in the forwards, strong, good defence, and it showed you against, a lot of people say Widnes will probably be the only one, but Halifax could be a bit of a bolter.
Yeah, they were being strongly tipped, weren't they? What's happened to your Broncos, Stevo? What have you done to them? The second bottom of the table, pointless. You've come back, you're going to see them, you're watching them, and you seem like you've absolutely stiffened them.
It is no surprise, Eddie. No surprise at all, because David Hughes, the owner of the club, has made it quite clear that the days are gone when he'll bring people from the north of England, and he wants to concentrate on local juniors, locals anywhere in and around London. It will take quite a few years to get it into motion, and now he feels responsible to ensure that the development of rugby league in the south, London included, of course, is going to take a while. And there's no panic going on at the club. They realise that we've got a lot of players who are not all that experienced at the top level. And I must say, it's going to take at least 3, 4, maybe 5 years before they can challenge to then be promoted.
So they've got to go backwards to go forwards.
Yes. Over the period of time, it's worked. In the early days, it worked. I'm afraid that some of the players that were selected over the last couple of seasons, they didn't show their potential. And when that happens, you've got to make a decision. And they did. And they said, we're going to do it through local talent.
Well, good on him for that. Good on him for doing that, David Hughes, because, local talent is where the future lies, as you have said so many times in the past. I know you're always very close with your ear to the ground about events down under. What's been going on there? Some sad news, I think, to report, as well as everything else. Yes,
Johnny Raper, the all-time great of rugby league, an Australian jumper, has passed away. Johnny Raper, to me, was the first Australian superstar. This guy was loved by everybody. He was just a sensational player, but what a character. Every time you met him, he always had a smile on his face. And he was the first, shall we say, sports person in Australia to be a superstar on TV, doing ads, for selling products. Johnny Raper sells this product, blah, blah, blah. And people went out and they bought it. He was one of the wonderful rugby league characters. Everybody just loved being with him. They want his photo, etc. and so forth. And it is a sad loss. And rest in peace, a very, very close friend of mine.
Yeah, and Stuart Raper's dad, of course, the former Wigan and Castleford coach, Stu Raper.
That's right.
And pal of ours, yeah.
And we both send condolences to the family. And I do hope that the Rugby Football League, the NRL, they get together and pass on their condolences too, which I'm sure they will.
Absolutely, they will. Absolutely, I'm sure they will. They've not started yet. They're miles away from the start, aren't they? But sometime in the middle of March, isn't it? The NRL gets underway.
Yeah, they're having what they call trial games, start of the season games, just to get a little bit of the rust off their play. But these games can be quite, shall we say, controversial. You've always got to win in Australia. There's never so much about saying, we've got a lot to do and we've got a lot to change before the season starts. Listen, it doesn't matter whether it's a trial game or not. You're talking about Australians now. Australians just don't want to lose. That's why they're so good at many, many sports. You know, the ex-Hull Kingston Rovers Aussie Clint Newton,
Yes.
shall we say, is the boss of the NRL Players Association. Now, they have come to a deal with the NRL that they've relaxed the COVID-19 protocols for players and officials. Now, a lot of people will be surprised, but in Australia, even now, the players and their families, they cannot meet up. And they cannot go out to a theatre. They can't go out to have a meal. They can't go to a wedding. They can't go to a birthday party. Well, Clint Newton has sat down with the NRL and he has made it possible that now they can. They've added the different guidelines. You can now meet up for birthdays, etc., funerals, weddings, and well done, because it has been so restrictive for those players that were not allowed to celebrate with even their playing mates. But now that's lifted.
It's well done then to Clint Newton, Stevo, for getting this over the line. But I assume that the players will all stay within their own bubble, so to speak. They won't be allowed to go hither and thither. They'll basically be all together, but they can socialise with each other and their families now.
Yes, they can. And in certain areas, Eddie, they can also socialise with other families, providing that the protocol keeps you so many yards apart, etc. But at least it's the start. And like here in the UK, we are learning to live with it.
Yeah, a step in the right direction. Okay, that's good. That's another one done and dusted in this St. Valentine's week. And on behalf of all the Rugby League public, on behalf of all the Super League fans, on behalf of all of our podcast listeners, Stevo, happy St. Valentine's Day. Mwah! All the best, old boy.
Good God.